Hello and welcome to another jungle video, and in this one we're going to be taking a look at all perspectives of jungling. Well, 6 perspectives of jungling, as there are 6 roles. And no, this isn't like the video I made in July that talked about carnivore, omnivore, herbivore jungling. This is about how each class approaches the position. And yes, there are stereotypes about which roles fit into which archetypes of jungling, but we're here to break stereotypes. People always ask which jungle I should play, but it's very difficult to sort of isolate what their playstyle is, where there's crossover, and that's why I made the first edition of this video, and that's why I'm making this one. And do keep an eye out on the channel because I will be doing dedicated gameplays for each of the classes mentioned in this video so that you can see how exactly you should be playing with them in order to carry. So if you enjoy more of this relaxed educational video, please don't forget to like, comment, and of course subscribe to the channel. Feel free to join me on Planet 9 for more tournaments and other giveaways very soon. And now without hesitation, let's begin. And of course we're going to begin with assassins because that's why you all clicked on this video, to hear me tell you that assassins are associated with damage and fun. It's okay, I understand little Timmy and Iron, wants to use Kha'Zix to get that diamond border eventually, but really these roles do best in certain elos, and you see that marked in the best jungler videos. Assassins are not very forgiving. Yes, you have high damage. Yes, you have supreme solo kill potential early, and you will be rewarded with good reactive pathing when laners overstay, they greed, they try to get that last plate. Yeah, you're seeing that footage now. I pinged a Yasuo back 100 times, but as always, they don't listen, and the Kha'Zix says thank you. 2 times, 3 times. If you cannot punish the enemy jungler in that 1v1 lead that you have as an assassin, you know that laners are going to give it to you free of charge. Now, any form of experience and gold lead for an assassin, those itemization specs, obviously everyone's going Eclipse or Duskblade at the moment. Not only will you nullify the existence of the enemy jungler through invades and counter jungling, most will not have resistances or the ability in their kit to, withstand the burst damage from a Kha'Zix, to withstand the damage from a Blue Cane who has enough E duration to go through the whole wall of China. And through that pressure lead, the 1v1s or 2v1s, the things where an assassin thrives in the chaos, you will control the map through that fear effect. If they don't have wards, if they have a whole bunch of paper champions, a paper champion would be someone that's really squishy, and they don't have innate CC in their kits, well, you are looking at having an absolute free game as an assassin. The key is though, you must win before you get to those team fights. You must be able to set traps, use your scanner to get deep. As soon as someone face checks, you eradicate them. Now obviously, as you elevate the game state with your supreme map control, as we talked about last week, the teams are going to be running around like headless chickens or headless turkeys as I'm recording this on Thanksgiving. That's all well and good, but what happens if the game doesn't end? What happens when you get to those 5v5 death balls, the tank jungler has eventually scaled, everyone is grouped up together? This is where strong atomization comes into effect. That edge of night, you're looking to cause that suction effect in teamfights. Even if you might die, you want to take at least 1 to 2 people with you. By diving into the middle of the team, if you're Blue Cane, you cause all of them to focus you. They burn spells, they waste their CC, and the rest of your team can clean up. And that's why people don't like Duskblade, because they do that, they kill the Soraka, and then they disappear all over again. However, certain champions will have a much more difficult time doing this. When a Kha'Zix or Evelynn tries to dive into a backline to create the suction effect and the enemy team has a lot of CC, usually they just die. And that's the most common complaint about assassins in lower elo, in mid elo. You say, well, I get super fed, I'm super far ahead, and I lose. Because you don't know how to teamfight as an assassin, you don't have patience in the later game to wait until your team actually triggers low HP targets for you to pick off. You have to know how to end the game when you are in the prime lead, when everyone is face checking bushes by themselves, when you have complete control of their jungle, while you can secure objectives very easily. But on that note, when you struggle to do that and those tanks take over, that is our next role. And what do we think of when we say tanks? Team fighting and crowd control. Now yes, for the first time in years, tank junglers that aren't Nunu can now jungle. Nice. Yes, I know everyone is enjoying Funfire Wind Cape, but what if I told you I have been having a lot of fun with Volley and Ornn with the Frostfire Gauntlet? Yes, there are other tank itemizations and most will think it's boring, but tank junglers think it's exciting. Finally, resistances. The problem inherently with tank junglers is that you can exploit them early in the clears. They don't have the same ability to farm and rinse camps. Yes, some like to farm until 6 and relax, but that's really something you can get away with in pro play. If you're simply a tank jungler farming until 6, guess what? Most other classes are either ganking better than you or farming better than you. So what are you doing? Some can gank more than others, like a Sejuani. She's got turbo CC in her kit almost as much as Ornn does. And if you have a melee laner, well, that E coming off cooldown so quickly is just funny. But ultimately, as a tank jungler, you are okay not matching experience leads on farming junglers. You are okay not necessarily matching the spam gank ability of a Lee Sin. The reality is you don't have the ability to match those cadences. However, the ability of a tank jungler to carry and do well is in finding the lane that is your win condition and making sure they have a huge lead, and then using that to extrapolate map control through objective focus. Yes, you do have matchup dependent 1v1s, yes, you do have farming junglers you can match up against, and the reality is the Sunfire and the new tank items with that damage is what allow tanks to do that and what brings us back into the forefront. This means you actually have pressure points to push enemy junglers away. This means you can actually get away with beautiful counter ganks, the best kind of ganks. It also means you can afford to gank a lot more, give away some of that experience, and still be able to match up in fights and skirmishes around those dragons. But really, we play tanks for the mid and the late game, and to quote a pre-corrupted Anakin Skywalker, that's where the fun begins. Although he might have said that as Darth Vader as well, but you know, younglings, it's kind of inappropriate and scary to think about. And what separates a good tank player from a bad tank player is knowing when to engage and when to peel. The goal is obviously to support those lanes, as I said, get someone fed, get the objectives, and it's all well and good carrying with your macro to that point. But if you cannot teamfight and know who to actually engage on, if you don't know when to pull that trigger or to peel the Kha'Zix with your CC, then it's literally all for nothing. Because at the end of the day, you will most likely be starved. You will often find yourself down a level or two over the enemy jungler who gets the pick-off kills, who gets the farming. Your farmings belong to your carries. But what does that matter when we only need Stoneplate and Warmugs, right? Next up, we have fighters and bruisers. What do you think about when I say fighting in the jungle? Mid-game disruption, dive, strong 1v1 potential against most other junglers, and most of the time, for Season 10 you're thinking of Hecarim, and for the high elo you're always thinking about Lee Sin. We should actually throw in the word mobility there as well. Ultimately, the reason why I put the assassins and then tanks and then fighters is because the fighters do it all. They can gank, they can farm, they can solo objectives, they do damage, they're HP stackers, you have hybrid builds, they can split push, they can disrupt and control fights better than an assassin can. I mean, why play Kha'Zix if you can just do the same thing to the ADC with a fully fed Lee Sin? Classically, you always think of bruisers in the top lane, Spear of Shojin, Conqueror, what have you, but fighters are really quintessential to the jungle as well. Things like Rast having an absolute party right now, destroys tanks, loves scaling with them, and can actually teamfight much better. We always say to people play things like Warwick. Now, Warwick is not in a good spot, they're giving compensation buffs, but at least historically has always been a great pick because you can do damage, be tanky, control teamfights and survive, and guess what? When you're alive and actually able to do those things, you can impact the game. If you're an assassin and you're dead, you didn't do anything. The biggest thing about fighters is how you transition into the mid game when you can actually be a pseudo-assassin on backlines. Your itemization and disruption in your kit will determine how you actually control those teamfights. But most importantly, a fed fighting jungler is almost impossible for any other class to deal with in that mid game. It allows you a dictatorship level control over objectives, and you are very difficult to itemize against. And again, the mobility in these champions is absolutely insane. Think about Lee Sin. Very low, you think you got him, ward hop, Q to the grump over the wall, and he's gone. Now, jungle mages are a very interesting class. They tend to struggle historically in the jungle. This is heavily because of immobility. 1v1 potential versus fighters, assassins, and tanks isn't always the best, and by extension, it forces you to give a lot of things up that you wouldn't have to if you were one of the superior classes. I actually made a video in Season 9 about the lack of AP junglers, and all of a sudden we had Evelynn rising the ranks, Karthus showing that he exists, unfortunately. You've got Elise as well. But that's the problem. When you think AP junglers, immediately you think of Elise and Evelynn. Now, Evelynn's really an assassin, not a mage at all. And Elise really acts like an assassin even though she is technically a mage. However, you've got that Lilia who just came out. Karthus reigned supreme for 2 years. Fiddlesticks got reworked and brings his own brand of freak. We used to have Talia, but really, Riot forgot she exists. I don't even know where she fits in the game. Literally no one but like 8 people play her. And most of them, if not all, are centered around scaling with good farming and strong ultimates. With the exception of Elise. I mean, we can throw in Nidalee, but does anyone actually view her as a mage? I mean, technically, but not really. So yes, it sounds and feels a bit messy the way I'm explaining this, because it is. Typically, your mages can become assassins later in the game, but you're not looking for that same level of map pressure and tempo and control unless you are Elise and Nidalee, as the other classes we've talked about so far. And pathing has to be super focused on avoiding bad matchups, counter ganking, again, the best kind of ganking, and using map control to sneak objectives, and then play the game as a mage normally would. Yes, you are susceptible to assassins, we can build Zhonya's, but again it's still risky. If you're a mage and you run into a Rengar or Kha'Zix in the bush, you are dead. Your pathing and jungle tracking has to be absolutely exemplary, and you have to be a savant at letting the game come to you and taking what is given. This will let you scale, this will let you take what you can, and this will let you play to the win condition, usually you. And while you're turbo scaling with your farming, what are the other classes doing during that time that elevates the game beyond the point where you can do anything? So expect to be invaded. But if you can make those counter ganks, and if you can have opportunistic roams for cleanup kills, you time your ultimate ganks very well, you can get fed, get ahead of the enemy jungle class, and then start to control things a lot sooner than otherwise. So stick to those good jungle practices like Fiddlestick's brain sticks sucking to the jungle camps. But if anything goes wrong on your end, you make a big mistake, and the game ends before you're able to turn on, and I wanted to make a bedroom metaphor in quotations, with the emphasis on the turning on, so I'll just let that lie. Because the next one is a Marksman. Well, basically what I think of in this case is range abuser. But actually, aside from Graves, who was reworked to be a jungler, and Kindred, who was designed to be a jungler, Marksmen or ADCs have not found a lot of success in the jungle. Sure, we have our niche Teemo builds every now and then. Yes, I spammed 100,000 games of Kai'Sa jungle in Season 8, which unfortunately becomes worse with every single nerf and change to Kai'Sa. But it is a strange class that has 1v1 potential depending on the matchup. You have mobility over walls with Kindred and Graves. Graves has dominated the meta the whole year, doesn't like it into tanks as much as Kindred does, who can actually, shred tanks. Really what you're looking to do is exploit your range matchup to have timely invades, strong early games. You tend to scale very well. If you have even a small lead, most melee junglers will be struggling. And what you have to do in that point is play to the fact that you are the win condition. You are ranged, you have the damage spike, you have the mobility, and you can beat the enemy jungler 1v1. You can easily gank using your range. But honestly, it's always numbers based, it's matchup based. Outside of Kindred and Graves, there's just not a lot of substance to this particular class in the jungle. You play them like any other jungler, except when you're really strong, as I said with the range, the game is in your control. And now for the sake of Yankos, I'm going to give the support class here. Braum doesn't really count unless you're funneling. Please do not funnel though, because you have self-respect. And if you really want to be the ultimate supportive jungler, you're playing Ivern, designed to meet that niche, and there's a reason so few people play it. Almost always a hidden OP, super strong, and in Season 11, Ivern players got really excited because now they can actually use the smite button. On champions. Redemption, Ardent Censor, Imperial Mandate. When your ADC is 10-0 and inevitably tries to 1v5, you're right there to peel, shield, bush him up, and then have Daisy knock a few people around. It is literally like playing an actual Janna support except in the jungle, and obviously requires an immense amount of skill in comparison to other junglers because of how unique it is and how you have to find the win condition, support the win condition, while also having supreme counter jungling with those camp secures. And yes, we saw at Worlds things like Shen, you have the global ultimate with a shield. SOFM was building Knight's Vow and being really supportive. And while we talked about Nidalee being sort of this mage, pseudo-assassin kind of unique jungler, she can also build all the healing and shielding items to make her more relevant in the mid to late game while still having a huge amount of damage. Really, these choices are all about amplifying and making stronger your teammates, the definition of support in the jungle. But I do want to mention that the Zyra jungle I play, she's technically a support, but really she's a mage played in support. Same for Brand. Morgana's the most supportive out of those three, and Brand is the most viable jungle. Morgana the same, but they really suffer from the same issues that mage junglers suffer from: lack of mobility, inability to actually take objectives solo. You can't match up 1v1 to a lot of the meta junglers. And yeah, if you get fed as a Brand and a Kha'Zix face checks the bush, his days are ended. But really, you just don't clear as fast as others, you don't have the same ganking prowess, and your only hope in hell is to control the game with good pathing until you get to the point that, you can actually win the fights. And for the sake of completion, and for the sake of everyone mentioning it in the comments, yes, I've seen the Sunfire Leona jungle. I've seen the other off-meta support junglers. All I'm gonna say to that is, spam gank. Spam gank because you cannot farm for the life of you. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed the breakdown of the classes in the jungle and what to look for. Use this as well as the carnivore, omnivore, and herbivore archetypes to develop a champion pool that you really enjoy. I will once again make the champion pool video for Season 11 as we get closer to the season beginning. But please do like, share, and comment if you enjoyed and learned something. Don't forget to please subscribe for all the exciting content coming very soon. I'm really looking to load up on these kind of videos, the champion guides, the gameplays, everything in December. And do keep an eye out on the channel because I will be doing dedicated gameplays for each of the classes mentioned in this video so that you can see how exactly you should be playing with them in order to carry. So as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.